Welcome to She's a Full-On Monet, a digital lifestyle magazine for women. Every week, our editor-in-chief, Kelly Castillo, along with Megan Block and special guests, participate in a deep dive discussion about recent articles and topics we have covered. We invite you to become part of our community where everyone's welcome. You can totally sit with us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to She's a Full-On Monet. We are very excited to have you here with us today. I am your host, Kelly, and I have with me, as always, Megan.
Good morning. I like you in pink. I don't ever see you in pink.
I wear pink a lot, but since we usually record in the mornings, I feel like I'm more like in workout clothes or my sweats still, and
I'm always like blue or black, like whatever, is just muted tones. I like it. It's pretty.
Sorry. Summer, right? Well, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, I know. We were just, before we started recording, we were talking about my preschooler isn't off for summer. She goes 3 days a week, but I mean, on Tuesdays, I feel the summer. Tuesday, Thursdays, I feel it because they're both home. So it's fine. Yeah, it's been a full week and they're already bored. So going great. I have nothing planned for them. I'm not that mom that has a coordinated camp schedule and no, it's they're winging it. We're all winging it.
Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully we get through it because summer is not my favorite season because of the chaos and the lack of routine. I'm very much a girl who loves her routine. So
if you could enjoy summer the way it's meant to be enjoyed, though, I love the weather and travel and going to the beach, but I haven't been able to enjoy summer since I was a kid. So not for summer anymore because it's just chaotic and hot.
Yeah, I think it's just was so many years of a negative mindset of summer because my kids, ever since my kids' oldest child started school, which is 22 years ago, summer was just chaos and I still had to work and they had no school and they had no plan and routine. And my work day would be interrupted with, 25 phone calls. Little things. Can I have a popsicle? The babysitter's mean and we don't want her anymore. It doesn't matter. So many phone calls of nonsense that my productivity in summer just always went so far down. Sorry. And, I lived for a long time where it gets really hot and that's not super fun. And so, yeah, summer's not my favorite, but maybe I will be able to turn the tide and learn to love summer now that my kids are pretty much out of school. I have a kid home from college for the summer right now. And so, we got kind of used to having a quieter house.
Right. Now it's a little less quiet.
A little less quiet because she also has, she has a service dog. So we have an extra pup around the house.
Do they all cohabitate well together?
No.
Not at all.
No, not at all. And it's a younger, smaller dog. So
chaos.
I don't know. Chaos.
It's fine. I'm also the kind of person where the gloomier the weather, the happier I am.
Oh yeah, I love. Sorry, I don't know if I can clear my throat. I love spring and fall. Those are my favorite seasons. I do love the holidays. I love Christmas, but we don't really get a winter here. We get some rain. That's about it. But I love spring when everything starts to bloom. And then I really love fall when it starts to get that crisp in the air. Yeah. And I love Halloween and I love back to school. That is just my happy
back
time.
To school, right? I know. Bye. No, that's I like it when it's colder and I don't know, I don't know. Anyway, we could do
we're off topic.
This is our podcast on seasons, everyone.
No. What we are actually going to be talking about today is we've talked on this podcast several episodes, I feel about adult friendships. But today we want to talk about navigating when those adult friendships end and when to know is the right time to end a friendship and how to end it. And it's kind of a complicated subject. But that's what we wanted to talk about today because it is different. When you're a kid, I feel like there's always a big dramatic episode that ends a friendship, and it doesn't need to be that way when you're an adult. In fact, I don't think it's usually that way. It can be, but in my experience, at least, and now I'm a very unemotional person, so it's really hard to get a big dramatic reaction out of me. When my friendships have ended as an adult, it's just been kind of a drifting away, which is, I think, normal and totally fine. And a lot of the times that's because the circumstances that caused us to be friends have changed. So when my kids were in a specific sport, I had my friend group of moms of other players of that sport, because we would do like weekend tournaments and away things and travel together. And so I had a little close group of friends that were like the moms of that sport. And then when my kids stopped doing that sport, we drifted apart from each other, which I think is totally normal. That's what was bonding us. And I also had a group of mom friends who I still have contact with and love dearly, but they were the mothers of the kids who are all the same age. They all started kindergarten together, and we were close friends all the way up to high school graduation of these children. And it was very much like a good environment for us to talk about things that were going on with our children, who were all the same age and all the same classes, and some of the conflicts that they were having. They lost some of their peers in the high school years, which was really a hard challenge for them to go through it. We talked about that last episode about.
Yeah. And that will bond a group even more.
Right.
Moments come together. So
yeah. So we had this great friend group of moms of kids who all hung out together from kindergarten to high school graduation. And I know that's rare, but that's what we had. And it was great because if our kids had a conflict with each other in their friendship, we as moms could figure out what was going on. I mean, when they were young, we stayed out of their high school drama, but when they were young and it was like, oh, they were best friends yesterday and today they're not talking, we could kind of, facilitate some repair of that. Or if there was a problem with the teacher, we could talk about that. There was just a lot that we shared over those, 12 years of friendship. And I'm still close with those ladies. And plus it's great to have those kinds of friendships because, if I was in a rut, I could call and say, hey, can you pick up my kids from school today? Or, we're doing this weekend and we're going to be out of town. Can she stay with you? Like there was such we actually had a group chat called Our Village, because that was our mindset. Like we were all coming together to raise our kids together. And it was really, really nice. It was a really great supportive environment. So my daughter is still super close with all of those kids. So us as moms, we've stayed in touch even now that they're 2 years into college. So it's really great. But yeah, and I have work friends who I've had really close relationships with when we were all working in the same office or same environment. And then you leave that job and you kind of drift apart. I think that's normal. I'm happy to say that I've never had like a big dramatic friend breakup.
I think how you handle it comes from, honestly, a lot of different elements. I mean, I've had a mix of both. I've had some really dysfunctional ones that were kind of like, it's like, you think someone and then conflict comes up, right? Even in dating, like you think you like, and like your first fight, then you really see what somebody is really like when conflict comes up, and either it's a positive, healthy thing, or it's a negative thing, and I don't know any good friendships that are based on things that are real, that don't have conflict at one point come up. You need to be able to navigate through that just like you would in any relationship. And so, I've been surprised personally by some people who I thought were my friends who reacted in a way that was like a friend who will like never ever talk to you again, because they have a problem with something, but instead of talking it out like adults, like we're taught to do, it's just easier just to never talk to you again and you're ghosted. And the things that I have problems with that is it's left the other person feeling all kinds of trauma about it. And then they go into friendships with this like guard up thinking that that's possible, so.
Yeah, I will say this. I have experienced that, because I had a situation where my daughter had come to me and told me that one of her friends was doing something dangerous. And I've always told the kids I'll keep their confidence, but if it's something that affects health and safety of another person, I have to tell.
You have
to. I have to. So I that mom, I thought that we were close, and I sat her down and I said, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but my daughter saw your daughter, at a party doing this thing, and I'm worried for her because I care for her so much. And I didn't know if you knew, and if you already knew, forgive me intruding in your life.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, I would want someone to come to me with that information.
Yeah.
And I shared that with her, and she basically never spoke to me again.
Wow.
I mean, she was polite when we were in group company, but she never we were very close and our friendship just dissolved over that. And I don't know if it was embarrassment, because I can picture that, or if she was upset with me for intruding in her business or what it was, but we never spoke of it again. And I wish now kind of that I had sat her down after and said, what's going on? Like I passed no judgment on you for whatever happened. And I thought I was doing the right thing. And, because I do still feel like I did the right thing, but I'll never have that conversation with her probably Yeah. And she ended up moving out of state. So, I mean, I've really lost all contact with her. It's really sad.
Wow. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I think a lot of we carry so much trauma from our childhood, and we are a combination of all the experiences we've gone through. When I lost my mom suddenly. So since then, closure's huge for me. Like, I think closure is big for everyone, but me, I'm like, I even if I don't like the information coming at me, I would rather have an honest conversation than to be left with figuring it out and coming to conclusions myself. Because I'm an overthinker.
You go over it in your head so many times.
Because I just lack of closure. It just, because of a traumatic experience, has really left me that way. So when friendships end and I don't know that they're ending until the person is just completely ghosting me, and then I'm left to put the pieces together, that actually does horrible mental damage to me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I figured I would bring that up because I'm not sure if that type of conflict resolution, we'll call it, is stemming from lack of knowing how to do it as a kid. Because I just feel like as I become more and more and more of an adult in society's eyes, because I'm in my mid-30s, I'm heading more towards 40s, 50s, I have an obligation as an adult to handle things in an adult way, and so to run away and take my ball because I don't like the game that's being played versus just calmly explain. If I'm telling my kids to solve a problem in a certain way, I should be doing that too.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't understand that form of conflict resolution at all.
I don't either, but when I'm upset with somebody for something, or they've done something that hurts my feelings, I have no issue with saying, you know what, when you did that, it made me feel this kind of way. And I'm sure you didn't mean it, but can we talk about it? I have no problem doing that. I don't have a problem with dealing with conflict, but I respect the fact that some people do. And so if for whatever is going on in their life, or if something happened that maybe I didn't even recognize as happening at the time, causes them to drift away from me or ghost me or whatever, I tend to just kind of respect that and let it go.
Like respect the dead and don't disturb. I'm totally about that. I think my issue is coming from this has happened. I can think of 2 examples that this has happened to me in my life. And one of them was the bestest friend you share everything with, right? And that you just you're your total 100% self around, that you wouldn't think this would ever happen to you. And then another person was somebody I'd known since I was very little, So it's maybe they were in a category of people that I thought would we could talk it out because we had so much in really important history.
Yeah.
And so it hurt more. It wasn't someone I met at a party and we kind of hung out and then got to know each other and then drifted and got ghosted. It was I had put them on a certain pedestal, and then to see that I was not even an option in their life or needed, it hurt on another level,
I can imagine that.
I would rather have the conversation of, hey, we can't be friends anymore because of this, this, and this, rather than me play it in my head and try and figure
and wonder what you did and what happened. Yeah, there's too much not lack of clarity. I know when I got divorced from my first husband, we had a lot of mutual friends that we hung out with a couple friends that we hung out with on a regular basis, or other families with kids our kids' age that we hung out with on a regular basis. And we'd barbecue on the weekends, and we'd go to the beach, and we'd camp, and we'd do all kinds of activities together. And towards the end, when things were not great between us, I did share with some of the wives what I was dealing with and the decisions I was trying to make about whether to stay or not stay, or how unhappy I was, all of that. And I got a lot of support from them and a lot of encouragement, but what changed was that when I actually finally called the relationship off and decided to get divorced, they disappeared. And I thought that because they had been listening to me and been supportive and, telling me that I wasn't crazy and all of the things that I wanted to hear, I assumed that they would be there for me in that circumstance. But because we had been friends as a couple, they were uncomfortable being around either of us as we were getting divorced, like it's contagious or something. So suddenly all these people who I thought were like my good friends were just gone. And I found that to be really hard to deal with. I'm very spiritual, but I'm not religious. I don't vibe well with organized religion, but my ex-husband is. He's very religious. He attends church weekly. He's Bible studies, things like that. He's very big onto it. And so most of these couple friends that we had met through like his church and all the outings and stuff that they had planned all together. They would do like weekend camping trips and things for the kids. And while I didn't always attend services with him, I did attend like these events. So we became friends with all these people. So I think I had it in my head because they were religious people that kind of, you know, friendship and connection would carry forward.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that at the first sign of conflict within our marriage or divorce that they would bail. And that did hurt because I expected. They had been so supportive during our conversations about, I'm not sure if I'm making a bad decision. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not happy. Like they were like, oh, you know, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like if you're not happy, you need to, you know, find your own path or whatever. But then when I did it, they were like,
oh, sorry, we can't
be friends
with you. Yeah,
right.
It's funny because it's super sad and it's super unfortunate to have to go through those situations, but you know, I'm always like glass half full kind of girl if I can. It also makes the situations when if you do get into a conflict with someone that you consider a close friend or a best friend and they handle it in a mature way and talk to you and talk through you, like my best friend Jen, you know, I came into that friendship with these past traumas from other friendships. And so at the first sign of our first conflict, I was kind of prepared for her to bail. And it wasn't like that. And it made me value that friendship so much more because I knew it could weather a storm, you know, because in my mind, it was like the first sign of drifting, you know, like my best friend, and she's still, I consider her my best friend. She was my maid of honor. You know, it lives in New York and we went from hanging out all the time to seeing each other twice a year. But every single time she comes, she always makes sure that we get lunch. Like she makes time for me. She makes our friendship a priority despite the distance, but we have drifted, you know? So when you do meet people in your life that can weather a storm, it just shows you that not everyone is like that. And it gives you hope for friendships as adults, because like you said, it's so easy to like, we're all shoved at like recess and lunch and like play dates or sports where it's like, if you're going to make or break a friendship, it's going to go down and it's going to go down in person because you don't know how else to handle it. And then as adults, we're left with our own ways of how we handle conflict to navigate how we're going to handle these conflicts and breakups. You know, you may realize that a friendship's not good and then you're worried, then you're left with how do I navigate this in an adult way? Because I don't want to leave a person like us with this traumatic experience, but I certainly don't want to be in this friendship because it's not serving me anymore. So it's like, how do you do it in a healthy way? You know,
one thing I've learned, like with my family, not my kids and my partner so much, but like my family, my dad and my sister growing up, is that when we had difficult things to talk about or conflict with each other, that none of us are really confrontational people or emotional people. I found that it worked best for us to write each other letters. So if I was really upset with my dad about something that he did, instead of, you know, yelling or sitting him down and having a big dramatic talk, I would write him a letter and tell him what he did and how it made me feel and why I felt that way. And he would respond to me. He would either sit me down and talk to me after he read the letter. And sometimes he would take some time and read it more than once to really understand what I was trying to say. Or he would write me a letter back. It depended on how, you know, emotional the conversation was. And I know that's not everybody's vibe, but if you really are not a conflict person and the idea of sitting someone down and having a conversation with them about why you don't want to be friends anymore is scary and overwhelming to you, if you were to write them a letter, it's at least, or an email or something like that, it's at least better than ghosting.
It really is. Yeah. It is. It's never easy. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to receive it. There might be you're also like worried about the follow-up too. Cause that's the thing is like social media sucks where like, it's not like bye, like you might still be like following each other online, you know, like you're still connected in a way, and it on one side may not have been like, it may not have been a mutual leave, you know. So but you don't want to string someone. They're gonna get an idea, and you don't want them to have to figure it out themselves. They're gonna bring other mutual friends in. They're gonna ask questions, right? So they're gonna be like, hey, Sarah, do you know why so and so? And then it's just gonna get weird, you know. And then
it pulls other people in, and it creates a gossip environment.
It's not good.
That's one thing I like. One thing I like about writing people letters when I'm upset about something is that I can be sure that I'm not going to say something I don't mean, or impulsively, like, you know, say something that comes out wrong. I can reread it back to myself and see if I got my point across, and if I, you know, attacked them personally or something I don't want to do. It gives me a chance to edit. And when you're speaking out loud to someone, it's, especially if you are an emotional person or impulsive person, it's easy to just say things that maybe you don't mean, but now they're hard to take back, and because you're angry or you're upset or your feelings are hurt or whatever. So, but
yeah. Or like if you're a little passive and you're talking, and the person is a little bit more of an aggressive person, and they can steer you away from doing the thing you intended to do, you know?
Yeah, or talk over you or gaslight you and say, you're crazy. That never happened. What are you even talking about?
And then you're left like back at square one or backwards. You're like, what just happened? It's easier just to get it out, get it done. It's funny you bring that up, because I don't remember this till you brought it up, but I would do that to my mom. Cause like my mom and I were like oil and water when it came to, but I felt like, at least if I wrote that, it was really more for me. I'm like, if I write the letter and I write this stuff down, at least I know she heard it. Cause she had this way of talking over me or gaslighting me sometimes as a kid. I don't want to blame her. I was equally responsible, but like, at least I knew she was hearing, I was getting my piece out, you know?
Yeah.
And it was also done in a way where I felt like it was more mature, because you're right. When you're writing something down, it takes, if you're going to write F you mother, like you have to write that down, you know what I mean? Versus like, this made me feel, you know, it's a little more thought out, versus like when you're reading off the person's emotions in a conversation.
Yeah, there's an owning it that only happens when it's written or typed versus speaking it, because it's easy to open your mouth and just word vomit pops out.
Oh boy.
But when you're writing something out, it really requires you to have more intention behind your words. And I think when we're trying to decide, like, when is it time to end a friendship, right? When is it time to call it off? And you have to kind of explore how the interaction with that person is making you feel. If every single time you interact with them, you come away feeling negative and feeling bad and feeling hurt feelings, or if the relationship is just really painfully one-sided. And you know, if I stop texting this person or calling this person, I will never hear from them again. It's always up to me. Those kinds of friendships can really weigh on you and take a lot of the joy out of friendships and our relationships with other people are supposed to create joy in our lives, and they're supposed to create growth in our lives. That's the whole point of, you know, interacting with other people in our lifetimes, is just to either grow from that relationship or find joy in it. And if you're not doing either of those things, it might be time to examine whether this relationship is serving you anymore. And it's okay to outgrow people, and it's okay for the circumstances to change and for you not to be as close as you once were. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be
it doesn't need to be
end
black
of
or white.
everything.
You can just take a 1 or 5 steps back from a friendship, because it's just, you know, it could be more of like a acquaintance or something, you know what I mean?
I've had times in my life where I have
tie friendships or whatever.
Weak tie friendships. Yeah, I've had a lot going on. I've had a lot of demands on my time and emotional energy, and I knew I wasn't being a good friend. I knew I couldn't, if I was asking for them to listen to me vent and support me and be there for me, I knew I couldn't give it back because I didn't have the capacity at that moment. I had too much going on. So it's okay to take a step back, and you can revisit that in the future. If it's a true friendship, you can pick it up where it left off, no matter how long it's been. And because that's better than having a really one-sided friendship that goes on for years, because it's not fair to the other person. You might be the one, like I was, that's making it one-sided. That's not fair either. It's not fair to take and not give. So I've had those friendships that kind of like ebbed and flowed over
Is
time.
there ever a moment where, I mean, the person's meaning something to you and you're starting to see it go down that path, that it's an appropriate time to have a conversation before breaking it off, like bringing it up? They might not even know, like, okay, she's still one of my best friends, absolutely love her to death. But it was like one of those where it was like a kid friendship becoming an adult friendship. And I had that conversation with her about how it was super one-sided on my part. I didn't want to leave the friendship, but I thought that maybe she was just blissfully unaware of the fact, that it was like all me. And of course there was the defense, but there was some change in that interaction with each other. Like she did step up, because I don't think she was like aware of the fact she was being so receiving of all of these things and not giving back. So is there a moment before you do the break off where you try and have some sort of like conversation with the person?
I think it's healthy to do that, because I also think if in a situation exactly like you're describing, depending on your personality, it would be easy to end that friendship, ghost that person, or just drift away, and then your mind think they didn't really want to be my friend. They weren't really trying. It's some lack in my part that they didn't feel that connection with me that I felt with them. And you can take it and make that part of your story, where that might not be the case at all. Like with your friend, once you mentioned it, she was like, oh, wow, I hadn't realized it, and stepped up. So having that conversation, allowing the other person to, if people don't know what your needs are unless you
also don't know
them.
what like even your best friend could not tell you everything she's going through. Maybe that
right.
Overwhelmed and they just didn't even factor in the fact they weren't being a good friend.
And maybe when you have that conversation, you realize it has nothing to do with you. And they say, you know what, you're absolutely right. But right now, I'm not able to give more because I'm taking care of my ill parent, and I've got kids at home, and my marriage is crumbling, and I'm in a shitty place.
Yeah.
And then you can say, I get that. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me. Like,
yeah,
that,
because it doesn't excuse the behavior, but we all have bad seasons in our life to where we kind of need a little grace given to us. But if we're not an open book about it, which we don't need to be, then we can really just take advantage of other people's love and friendship. And that's also not okay on the person's receiving end.
Right. It's important to be clear about that stuff, and because you guys could move forward with a weaker tie friendship and keep everybody happy, keep it going. And they would know that, when it comes to needing that emotional support, that's not what your relationship with them is. They need to go to someone else for that. And then they can go to you for just like fun and small stuff.
This is more for the ones that's like, they are literally bringing out the worst in you. They're draining you way too much to where there is just no benefit to keeping the friendship going. That, there's
but I want to say this too, because like I said, we're here to get joy out of our relationships with other people, but we're also here to grow from our relationships with other people. And sometimes people are in your life because there's a lesson there that you need to learn, or some growth opportunity for you in your soul.
Absolutely.
And if we only care about people that are easy to care about, then we're not growing. And so sometimes it could be someone in your life who's going through a depression. I don't know if you've ever had a close friendship or a close relationship with someone who's in a deep depression, but it isn't rainbows and giggles usually.
No,
it's hard, and it can go on a long time. And so, or if someone's going through something really, really bad in their life, I know we've talked about trying to be friends with someone who's just lost someone, or who is, in having mental health issues or whatever it is. It's really, really challenging. But those challenges are one of the greatest opportunities for us as humans to grow and evolve in our path, or whatever spiritual thing you want to call it. But I've noticed that when I embrace, I'll use the word, even though we're talking about friendships, but loving people who may not be the easiest people to love, that's when I've learned the most about myself. And that's when I've come out of it with like a deeper understanding of people in general, and of connections in general. And I really, those have been the most valuable relationships in my life, because if I just hung around with everyone who thought exactly the way I thought and never challenged me, and everything was just puppies and rainbows, then that'd be super great, but I wouldn't learn anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we don't see friendships, close friendships, those ones that we truly care about, as the same as we do like a marriage vow. But really, like, if someone's your best friend, like, you really think about it, or you're a really close friend, it's like for better or worse sickness. Like, if you are sick or you are going through divorce or you're doing like going through this stuff, like, you'd want them to be there for you the same as you'd want them, they want you to be there for them. So it's like, you know, if you know they're going through a bad season and they're being like the worst form of a friend, maybe like give them some grace for some time, you know, and try and be there for them. It's just really hard when it becomes so one-sided, you know, where it's like,
I mean, look, think of Pooh and Piglet and Tigger, how they always included Eeyore and they never cared, even though he was the biggest bummer ever. And they always asked him to play and they went to check on him when they stopped coming around. Right.
I've honestly, to be Girl Scouts honor, I've never, ever, ever walked away from a friend or looked at someone that's in my life and went, yeah, I need to like end that friendship. I always stay in touch with people. I'm always kind and friendly. I may not like hang out with you every Tuesday like we used to when I was 24, but like I've never had to go through the process of what we're talking about, which is,
you know,
like,
I have,
and it just doesn't seem fun, but I know there are definitely ways I wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I will tell you this. I have, and this is why
bummer.
I did, because I embrace everybody. I love everybody.
Right? So I'm like,
and I really like being friends with people who have very different viewpoints than me or come from very different backgrounds, because I love learning. And so that is great for me. And I love like widening my perspective. But I will say this, I have made some friends who I thought were so fun and we had a great time together. And then the more I got to know them, I realized that a lot of the time that they spent with me and with our other friends, it wasn't specific to me, there was a lot of negativity and gossip and a lot of talking about other people and in other people's business. And it was never like positively spun. It was always like, oh my God, did you hear about so-and-so? I saw her husband out at the bar with some other girl. And
they like thrive on it, right? Like
they get their eyes light up and they get so excited.
And in the moment, like I play for a minute, but then like after the second or third time, I'm like, oh, like this is not for me. Okay,
right. But they're great. They're great fun. And they you know, they're so animated about everything and they're fun to be around. But what I got to realize was that I was coming away from those interactions feeling like they did not align with who I was. That's not who I am. I don't like talking about other people. I stay in my lane. I mind my business. And then it started me thinking that, wow, I guess when I'm not here, they're talking about me. Because they're talking about people that we're friends with.
Why wouldn't they talk about me?
Right.
Like, why am I exempt from this rule? I am not.
Right. And if I'm going to be comfortable sitting there talking about other people we know and in their business, then I can't say anything when the conversation turns to me. So that made me really uncomfortable. And I realized that just didn't align with my values.
Did it ever bring that? I know that's not who you are to the core, but you know, when they say you are a combination of the company you keep or the five,
that's exactly what it was.
Did it ever rub off on you, even in the slightest? Did you ever notice yourself slightly gossiping a little?
The first few times I was like, oh my God, girl, spill the tea. I can't wait to hear it. And I would and then I would come away from that and I would just feel kind of like
gross.
Yeah. And then after a while I started to say, you know what, like, I don't want to talk about them. They're not even here to tell us their side of the story. Let's talk about something else. But it was always about other people. There were never like anything
What is
else.
That, man? I have so many but that's the thing. Did you have the conversation where you were like, this isn't working for me anymore?
No.
Because I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I have a person who I like hung out with weekly who every time and it was always about people like within our community of like mom, Disney mom friends. But I know she would talk about me actually, because like my friends would tell me what she would say, but I knew it was not bringing out the best of me. I knew it was not a good friendship. I knew she was talking about me. I knew our friendship had no real depth to it, but I never was like, we're not hanging out anymore. I think she decided we weren't hanging out anymore before I walked away from it. But I never had the conversation of like, girl, you're a bad seed. Like,
I didn't either, because
I kind of wanted to, because I'm like, people shouldn't be like that.
I know, but what I figured was there was no way for me to approach that subject without it feeling like me judging her, condemning her behavior. And
I don't judge you for judging or condemning her behavior, though.
No, but like she had a lot of other friends who were totally fine with those conversations, and that was their bonding moment, and they were having fun. And And so
was there a part of you that almost also felt a little sorry for her too? Because you know that also just all stems from insecurity from within. Like you only talk bad about others because like there's something else going on. Remember, we've all seen Bad Moms, right? Remember Bad Moms when we saw, and it was like Gwendolyn. Remember, she was like crying in the car, she didn't have friends, and everything was going wrong at the house. But like, she was always talking about other people and seeing
what I've found in my life is that when people are like that, and the only conversations that they're interested in having are about other people, they're trying to deflect from something going on in their lives that they don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
So if you were to just
sad,
if you were to sit down and chat with them and like, hey, what's going on? How are the kids? How is the husband? How is work? They don't want to talk about those things because
it's all fake.
They're trying to avoid talking about those things.
Because like the minute you get like a martini in them and like really ask them, like put a hand on your shoulder, like, how are you? Like, it's just going to break down.
Yeah. And I've also had a friendship where the lady in question, we were friends because our kids were friends and our husbands have some business going on together. So we were friends. We would hang out, have dinner together as couples a lot. But what I've noticed is that when she and I would have girl time, she would start right in complaining about her husband and her relationship with him and her life at home. And I was supportive for the first, few times, thinking, okay, she just needs somebody to talk to. But then I got to the realization that she was waiting also for me to reciprocate and start talking bad about my husband. She would ask me, and I'm not comfortable doing that. I feel like it's very disrespectful to my partner for me to talk about anything going on in our personal life, especially with people who he has business relationships with.
If you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it on your own. You're not gonna be like pushed or pressured to do it. It's like you're gonna confide in the person by choice, not because you want to like match the room.
Yeah. And I if I wanted to talk about something really personal going on with my relationship with my spouse, it would probably be my sister or my sister-in-law, someone I felt I could completely trust. And I just got uncomfortable because she started sharing things that I knew her husband would not be comfortable with me knowing. And then I was just made very uncomfortable. So I kind of weaned off of that friendship. We still hang out together as couples sometimes, but we don't do like the girls' nights.
Oh my goodness, they're still together. I was hoping this would end in like she done. Because sometimes people just, for whatever reason, growing up, they didn't have a close circle of girlfriends. They don't really know how to interact. And they think just based on what they hear, what they see, or what they think they know, that's appropriate form of communication between, I see it a lot. I never hang out in a circle of guys, so I don't know, but like in females especially, where it's like they complain about their husbands or what their husbands don't do at home, or like the kids, like literally like will talk so much about their own children.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here like, my kids are not saints, but my goodness, I know I hit kind of like a small jackpot because they're so well behaved and so great that I honestly don't have any stories to match these. But even if I did, why would I just use this moment to like talk negative? Like, none of you are therapists. Like, I'm getting nothing from this other than it looked like.
What it made me think about was like, what if my partner was sharing my personal struggles that I'm going through in my life or with my health with his friends like that? I would feel so betrayed. I would feel so hurt. And so because I could make that kind of comparison,
and it's not done in a way where you're getting actual advice on how to handle the situation. It's not like, I don't know what to do, like I need help.
No,
it's like, you're just literally just talking.
She was just venting to me about, how fed up she was with her spouse and his health issues that he was dealing with.
I would be so uncomfortable, and I know how you handle those moments. I could only imagine how you were feeling inside, because it's like, you don't want to be rude, but also like, this isn't.
I don't want to know these things about him. I don't want to, when I see him in a business setting or a personal setting, I don't want to be thinking about what you're talking about.
That comes from lack of maturity. I had a friendship, like one of the friendships I talked on about and I don't know if it was the only reason that we ended our friendship, but he did mention that it was because I married someone that I would complain about a lot when we were friends. And it's like, okay, well, I kind of thought that that's like what you would do sometimes. Like you would talk like about it, but I never realized that I was literally only painting a negative picture of this person. That when I went to go marry this person, and he is so not that, he's so fantastic, that I realized that like I didn't do a good enough job of balancing that or making the positive look really good, that he probably just thought that I was marrying this horrible person.
Yeah. And it made
It's
it really
not my
hard.
right to talk bad about like my fiance.
Right. And I'm sure as a friend, it made it hard for him to support you in that decision because he only had a small part of the story.
Yeah. And in my eyes, I was like, well, I just like, that's what we would like do. But I mean, I was the only one at the time really between our small friends that had a real like long-term relationship. And I was, I would come to them when I was upset, but I was also in my like mid 20s. I didn't know what I was doing. So you're right. There is a lot of negative effects when you just go and vent to your friend about your spouse, your partner, whoever, because you're painting such a negative picture and it makes them feel really uncomfortable when they're in the room with that person.
Yeah. I have a friend who, we're not friends anymore at all. We don't talk at all anymore, but we had a brief period of time where we were close, and she started dating a guy. And she would complain about how she didn't like him at all. And she was only dating him because he had money and because her parents wanted her to date him.
What?
Yeah. And, and she called him her troll. So she would say, oh, I'm going out with my troll tonight. I mean, it was very, very negative, all of it.
Wow.
She ended up marrying this guy, and now they have kids, and they have this like perfect social media life. And it's really hard for me to see, and it's hard for me to even like her pictures or comment positive things because I know too much. I know what else was going on.
Could you imagine if we knew everything about like if we knew what was really good? Because man, social media is such bullshit. It's so pretty and so fake, but man, there's some dysfunctional stuff going on underneath all that.
Yeah, it's really hard because
go to my page. You think it's I'm dysfunctional.
They've made a business out of
their family
as the perfect family. But I know who else she was seeing. I know what else was going on. Like I know a lot, and that's I think why we're not friends anymore. Because when she decided to move forward and marry this guy, she cut off a bunch of friends who knew.
It says a lot about her too, because if that's really what maybe she was saying all that stuff for attention, says a lot about you. Maybe she was saying all of it and it was true, and then she married him anyway. Says a lot about that person.
Yeah, but basically everyone,
good,
every one of her friends who knew where the bodies were buried got cut off.
Oh, burn them all, burn the evidence. That's not.
And she's like a reality TV person, and she's
so it's like image and then everything else.
Yeah. So anybody who knew the side of her that didn't align with her image that she was trying to build her business on got cut off.
That just makes me, again, at the end of the day, all I feel is just like really sad for these people, because it must be so lonely when everybody's gone,
Right. The only friends that I see her interacting with now, I only see her on social media and occasionally at public events, but the only friends I see her hanging around with are other reality TV star friends or social media famous people,
all for benefit,
and it's all about taking the group photo, and then they go their separate ways. And I know who she really is, and she's really a nice girl, and so I feel like she must be so lonely.
Yeah, that's what I feel when I hear about these things. But
because to be close with anyone and be vulnerable with anybody, she's putting her livelihood at risk. Yeah, she's putting her
1,000%. Yeah. If she were to put her happiness, she'd lose everything.
Yeah,
happiness or everything else. And you know what? We're all gonna have our breaking point. It's not going to be good because it's going to blow at one point. You can only paint a fake image in your life for so long before it does real damage on the inside. But that's a whole nother podcast. I mean, I think what we realize is the only real good way, if it's truly must go your separate ways. And if it's one of those friendships that has gotten to a level past just like social interactions and if there's a real friendship there and it's just not serving you, is to be honest, but be honest in a way that is going to be best for you. Like you said, if you're not a conflict person, who is, but if that you are not going to be able to be level-headed and handle and get your piece out in a way that's mature and okay, write a letter, write an email, be prepared for follow-up. And then it's up to you at that point if you want to follow up.
I truly believe that every person you have a good relationship with, even if it was good years ago and it's not good now, they deserve the opportunity to understand what's going on with you. And
it's not worth the trauma.
The opportunity to fix it if it's fixable. And if it's not fixable, then you're absolutely better off to just say, this relationship is no longer working for me. I'm glad we had our time together, but I need to move on, and leave it at that. Don't give any reasons. Don't give any, because it just opens the door for them to say, oh, I'm going to do it different now, whether that's romantic or friendship or whatever. If you've already mentally, you're done, that's the only way to go. But if you think it's fixable, then the best thing to do is to write them a letter, have a conversation, an email. An in-person conversation is, best if you feel like you can manage it, and just tell them how you're feeling. And you might be surprised. They might not have realized that and really be motivated to fix it, and upset that you're hurting and they didn't know. And so give them the opportunity, because we want to always assume that people have our best interests at heart. So it could be very unintentional, whatever you're feeling. They might not even realize it. Mm-hmm. So that's the best thing to do. But we all need friends in our lives where we can not have to wear a mask with them. We can just be our true selves, and we get accepted for who we are, and we get to have that kind of bond with other people. We can't isolate ourselves and not, have these kinds of relationships. So in order to have them, we either have to continuously make new friends and our whole life, which is exhausting, or we have to work through conflict with the friends.
And if you need ideas on that, I think we did a podcast on how to make friends as an adult, and there's a bunch of different ways to do that. But it's like trying to find a soulmate, love soulmate. I mean, you got to put in the work and put in the time and put in the energy, or you can try and harvest the friendships that you have. There's going to be awkward times. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be moments where you're going to be tested, but that doesn't mean that that's like, okay, bye. It doesn't have to be like that. It should be 50-50 as often as possible.
It should be. I was a completely different person in my teenage years and early 20s. I'm not even recognizable to who I was back then. I had a lot of stuff I needed to work through. I had a lot of trauma that I hadn't processed. Whatever the excuses are, right? I just had some bad habits, and I was not doing some great things. But here's the thing. When I changed and I became like my now version of myself, my first instinct was to cut off all the people who had known the old version of me, so that I could start fresh with people who didn't know my history, who didn't see me make all these bad decisions. And I could build new friendships that were clean. That was my mindset. But I had a couple of friends who were really persistent, and they did not go away, no matter how much I tried to make them go away.
Love those persistent friends.
And so eventually I gave in, and I'm still friends with them to this day. And they're the few people who knew me all the way from when I was a teenager or
people
younger.
Just don't know when to quit. Okay. They just like hear you and they're like, yeah, I think we can make this work though.
And they don't judge me for the decisions that I made. They love the new version of me. They loved the old version of me. And that kind of acceptance, now that I'm older and wiser and more mature, that kind of acceptance is something I'll never get from my new friends, because they don't know. They weren't there.
They only know the newer version of you, right?
Right. So it's a little bit of like, oh my gosh, if they really knew, they wouldn't maybe be my friend. But these few people who stuck with me and who say, we saw every version of you and we just love you regardless, it's so valuable. It's such a deep connection. And I really love those people for persisting and not giving up on me and not letting me give up on them, because I didn't realize that's what I needed until now. I'm older and wiser, and I thank God that I have those people, because it makes me kind of kinder and more forgiving to that younger version of me too. Because if other people can love you exactly how you are and forgive you your mistakes, then you should be able to as well. And that was a great lesson that I learned.
Yeah. And it's a part of your story too. I mean, it's easier to only have the people around you and socialize with the people that fit your current version of your story. But like, we have so many different chapters of our life that it's really important for, I mean, like I said, we only see each other twice a year, but one of my bestest close friends, I've been best friends with her since the first grade. She's seen literally every season of my life. And it's like, if I didn't have that friendship, the depth of me wouldn't be the same. You know, I need that layer. And so it's worth the effort. It's easier to just be like, I'll see you on Instagram or I'll see you on social media, but like, it's worth the effort, anytime.
I agree. So, and
make sure that they fit your soul. And
yeah. And unless, like some of the circumstances that we talked about where you come to the realization that one of your friendships is really bringing out a bad side of you or toxic or just not aligning with your values, those are the ones you can weed out softly.
Mhm.
And the ones where maybe you've just fallen into a negative place, or you've drifted apart, or they unintentionally or intentionally hurt you and you need to have that conversation, those are the ones worth having the conversation. Those are the ones worth having that confrontation, because conflict is a source of growth, and that's what we're all trying to do. So have that difficult conversation, have it in writing if it makes you that uncomfortable, but give them an opportunity. And you might be surprised, and you might really be like, kind of, okay, that people are not as bad as I thought, because they never even knew that they hurt me doing what they did. And they, are, now that I brought it up, I feel so much better, because we're able to heal this and move on, rather than me moving on with anger and bitterness.
Exactly. Yeah, it's better to do the uncomfortable thing of having the conversation or writing the letter out than to like live through a lie of a friendship and go deal with that every day. It's like,
Right.
Oh, I don't want to take my tooth out, but you want to live with tooth pain for a year longer. Let's just take the tooth out now. Like, what's the point of waiting? So
Yeah.
if you're aware of it, you got to take action on it and do it in a way that's going to see you on the other side without scratching your head,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, if you've had conflict with a friend and you guys were able to work through it, or maybe you weren't and you had to end the friendship, we would love to hear your story. You can go to our Facebook page. She's a full-on Monet on Facebook, and we have a discussion group on there. We would love to hear what you guys have to say. And thank you again for joining us, for coming back week to week. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, friend. Good to see you.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to bookmark our site, she'safullonmonet.com, and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're enjoying this podcast, it helps us a lot if you can follow, rate, and review. See y'all next week.